We're here to chat about managing commissions for flat fee or 100% brokerages. In other words, those of you who have agents that simply pay the brokerage a set closing fee or transaction fee. And why is this topic important? Well, because as simple as a flat fee may sound, the truth is there's actually nuance to it. In fact, some of you here, I know, don't just have one fee. You actually have a few fees that are available under your flat fee structure. And managing that in pipeline can certainly help save time and alleviate those areas of managing commissions that can be frustrating for both agents and admin in the entire process. So I want you to know too that I work with a ton of companies on the free trial side of pipeline, many of which are flat fee brokerages. And there's certainly no shortage of reasons why it's such a common structure, right? It's simple. It can be a great recruitment incentive for top producers. It's pretty easy to manage, at least can feel very straightforward. But of course, that's not always the case. And that's the reason why we're here today. Let me go ahead and share my screen. In fact, we have a little bit of a visual here. I should say that if you're not a flat fee brokerage, you're certainly welcome to hang out with us here today. I'd love to have you, but next week we'll do a similar Pipeline Pro webinar focused instead on traditional split brokerages and those commission plans and the best practices for managing those. But for now, we're certainly going to be focused on the flat fee brokerages, especially those that may have a variation of fees that adds to the nuance, to the challenge of managing those commissions, keeping track of them, reporting, things like that. Some fees that we also see along with a single flat fee would be, marketing fees, TC fees, signage, photographers, staging, things like that. And it's the entire combination that really makes this particular call so important. So with that introduction complete, we'll go ahead and jump right into it. The commission module, again, for those who don't know, is essentially an added layer in pipeline that provides financial functionality in a way that doesn't compromise the simplicity of pipeline that y'all love. It's not just a financial tool though too. It's pretty important to note that for companies using it, right, it doesn't always serve as a replacement of an accounting system. In fact, very rarely can it be an entire replacement of that. It's really designed instead to be a seamless way to incorporate simple and powerful information into the transaction management process that you have. And perhaps more importantly, it's also there to integrate that information into your agent's routine as well, something that's available again through the commission module. So to start us off, I'm going to go through three parts on this talk. I'm going to try and keep it as short as possible here. And we're going to go through three parts. The three parts are going to start with number one, which is managing your fees. Here inside Pipeline, we're going to take a look at one of my transactions. A lot of offices already use the commission summary field. Here inside 931 Jefferson Parkway, I use the commission summary field to notate the different types of fees that our demo office here, quote unquote, is going to collect from agents. In this case, I may notate whether or not the agent has elected for a certain service or an add-on to the package. Maybe it's just the standard transaction fee. But in this case, we've got John here on this deal, and he's actually going to be using our photography and video fee or package as well. So we'll collect that from him, as well as our TC fee on top of that. It's a really simple part, but throughout the life of a transaction, this can be added really at any stage. Makes it super easy to collect that information ahead of time. It's available to you when you go to manage those commissions. And then once, of course, the commissions are managed, all of that's available inside the system. We'll see every fee that we've collected from our agent. And by the way, I'm going pretty granular. I'm going to step back here in a few moments, but right now, again, we'll notate those fees. We'll write down what it is that we're going to collect. And then all of those will be available to us and to our agent on the transaction anytime we take a look at it. Now, without that, traditionally folks are used to something more like this. And this is of course going to be pretty common, whether it's Google Sheets like I've got here or Excel. Typically transactions and the commissions for them are managed on this, especially for flat fee brokerages, because it feels so simple. We have a transaction fee, pretty well correlated, very straightforward. But again, when you start adding additional fees, when you take into account what still exists, referrals, deductions, client fees, and things like that, it certainly does become a little bit more complicated to keep track of. Some folks start with a blank tab. They'll open up a brand new tab. They'll calculate the commission for that on every new closing. Sometimes they'll manage a ledger that has each deal listed here, like mine has. I've got 3 transactions. That certainly enables you to track gross commission amounts, transaction fees, and total amounts paid to your agents pretty quickly here. Same thing if you have an agent production report, right? You can list out each agent, how many transactions they've closed. Knowing that they pay a transaction fee for each one of those makes it really simple to just say, you know, John's had 2. We have a $3.99 transaction fee, which means we've collected about $800 from him. So things like that are pretty simple inside an Excel sheet. Some of the problems, of course, though, are going to be getting that information to the people who also need it, right? On this particular account, I own it, I see it, I use it. If anyone else wants access to the sheet, I either have to share it, I have to reproduce information for them. They can make a copy of it. I don't want all my agents seeing this. I may not even want all my admins seeing it. And if I send this information off to a third party, I certainly don't want them having to wade through the information as well. So while this may be pretty straightforward and simple, part 2 of managing commissions, at least on this call here, I'm going to call making financial information easily accessible. Because ultimately we want this information that we have available here in the hands of the people who also need it, not just ourselves. Again, that would be agents and admin, of course, third parties like our closing company. And I want to start that off with this email. We talk about simplicity a lot here at Paperless Pipeline. The commission module is no different. For me, this is the crux of the solution. It is the reason for it. Basically, this email here is our production email, and it's automatically sent to agents and to admin if it's turned on. But it is a really great way to give your team the information that they're going to find pretty helpful regarding what they did in the previous month and where they're at for the year. So even again, as a flat fee brokerage, you may have the fees you're collecting. You want to know exactly what you've brought in through those fees over the last month, over the last year, of course. Your agents will also want to know how much they've received. And it does both of that for you automatically, again, if you've got that turned on. So rather than having to go to that sheet every time an agent calls up, you can quickly take a look at it here. For those using the commission module, you already know that. If you don't have that turned on, definitely try that out. It's certainly one of those features that goes a long way because it puts some of that financial power and autonomy into the hands of your agents and the people who need to see it. The second report I want to show you here, the second kind of option is going to be our agent commission report. And this is something that agents can pull as well. So while it may be simple for you to manage the fees that you're collecting, even if it is an Excel sheet or just through the system, agents still have to take into account the percent of the commission they've collected, the amount that they've earned after those fees have been taken out of their commission, and that still needs to be done somewhere. And this report can do it for them. It can show them exactly where they're at. Here I've highlighted a few sections. In fact, I've done that on a couple different reports here. But on this one specifically, I want to highlight the 3 lines here. So gross commission earned, fees paid, and then of course the net commission earned by that agent. So 2 really important pieces of information here. Ultimately, what they've collected for any given time period that this report's been run for, and then of course the fees that they've paid to the company as well. Now, if your agents are on some sort of cap where that fee is waived after a certain amount of transactions closed or a certain amount of fees paid in the brokerage, this will give them the same information. They can see how much they've already paid in, but they can also see how many closings they've had. So if they're working up to 10, 15, 20, or some set number where that fee is waived, it's going to consistently give them the information that they need to keep themselves moving towards that goal. Same thing with the email, right? It's going to give them the same data point to know exactly how many closings they've had. The third item here is going to be our commission statement. This is available for agents inside the system. So if they do log in, they click on their commission statement. This is something that's always going to be available to them as well. And the really important points here are yet again highlighted. We have our net payable at the bottom, but we also have year-to-date income. Really important again for flat fee brokerages who may be employing a pretty solid number of part-time agents, maybe agents who just do a couple deals a year, agents who may not be in the system consistently enough to keep track of this on their own. These types of reports are going to give them exactly where they're at every time they encounter it. So if they do have a closing once every couple months, every time they see this, it's going to give them exactly where they're at for the year and what they earned on that particular deal. But agents aren't the only ones that we need to make this financial information easily kind of accessible for. And so there's two other ones to go through as well. The commission disbursement authorization, you've probably seen this highlighted on our site or just throughout the site, especially if you're using the commission module. It's always going to be automatically generated for you. A couple different ways this can appear. Keep in mind that mine here is not the way that it would have to appear to you or for you if you're not yet using the commission module. But I do want to highlight a couple things as well. If you're sending off financial information to your closing company, this disbursement authorization can do that very quickly and very easily. So here we have our brokerage collecting that $3.95 transaction fee. In this case, that's the only one that we're collecting from John. And then John's going to collect his net commission. Again, very straightforward, makes it appropriate for the particular party that needs to see it. And then the last one I want to go through is the brokerage statement. It's very similar to our agent commission statement that we just saw, but this is something that's often useful when you employ or have an accountant, maybe in-house or external, and you want to give them information about the closing that has just occurred, not just what the agent's made, but exactly line itemed fees that you've collected from that agent. In this case, I'm collecting quite a few fees. So this particular agent, who do we have here? It's probably John Kennedy again. He's on most of our deals. He's actually paid in $3.95 for the transaction fee. We have a $2.99 TC fee. We have a marketing fee of $100, so $99. Staging fee, photo and video fees, things like that. And if you're charging similar types of fees, making sure that it's easy to account for those on any calculation, but also share that information with the correct finance person is always going to be a really important task. And the commission module, and specifically this report here, can break that out very clearly to the people who need to see it. And all of this that we just saw, of course, is not even from, well, it's from within pipeline, but I'm viewing it from outside pipeline. And that's one of the really great things here too, is that because they come as PDFs, because they come as an email, you can receive this information in a way that's best for you, and you can send that information to the people who need it in a way that's best for them. We'll jump back into our transaction here. I'll walk you through the exact same thing. We have our fees at the top, which we've already covered. Right in the middle here, we have our brokerage statement. That was one of the last ones, reports that we saw. We have our agent commission statement, and below that, we have our commission disbursement authorization. All of which created automatically as soon as you manage your commissions, generally 30 to 60 seconds, and all of this is populated. And that's really what's going to start that second part of making that financial information easily accessible to the people who need it. So as a quick recap here, step one, managing your fees, making sure that they're accounted for here. They can then be accounted for when you manage those commissions. There's fields actually within pipeline to account for, I think it's up to 10 different transaction fees, especially helpful for those of you who may be collecting different types of fees like we have here. Step two is making sure that that information is sent off to the appropriate people as they need it, but also in a way that's best for them, given their role, given their familiarity with your system. Again, for agents who are part-timers, who who may not even be in the system, right? You may be asking them just to email documents in. They may not be logging in consistently whatsoever. The same information can be and should be available to them regarding the money that they've brought in, the fees that they've paid. So step three, or part three of this, I want to highlight now as certainly more of the this is for you type of benefit. Really that simple reporting for better forecasting. Traditionally here, if we go to our transactions page, it's not that difficult to have a rough idea of what your income is going to look like, or the revenue is going to look like based on what you have in here. Right? As a flat fee brokerage, we know that we're going to collect $3.99 maybe on every one of these closings, as long as they actually close and don't fall through. So here I've got 3 of them. Hopefully, again, you've got far more than 3. But for February, I can expect around $800. Right now, I'm looking at March. I've got 1 deal pending in March, or closing in March, which means about $400. Hopefully, again, you've got far more, and the more you have, the more important it becomes to sort and filter this page in a way that you can get a rough idea of that pretty quickly. So you can use those options at the top to sort just by label. We'll select pending here, search, use a little number at the top to see kind of exactly how many you have, because again, you're gonna have likely far more than just 2, but we may have 10, 20, 30, multiply that by your fee and you get a pretty rough idea. Unfortunately, rough isn't what we're really looking for here, because forecasting and making decisions based on the money coming into the brokerage is certainly going to be something that requires a number that's far closer to accurate than rough. And so what we want to do here is look at our reports page. Depending on how the commission module is set up, your agent fees section towards the bottom here, let me highlight this for you. It's going to give you a pretty good idea of the fees that you're collecting from those agents on the pending deals. And so in this case for February, I can actually expect around $2,500. As we just saw a few moments ago, using that rough number of 800 certainly didn't get us there. And so using this commission summary page is going to be a really great way to see exactly the total number, the kind of the aggregate value of the fees that you're collecting from agents on those deals at a moment's notice. You can really quickly take a look here, see exactly what it is, separates it from what's essentially going to be the gross commission, since we're not collecting a split from this. This field here is going to be the one that we really want to pay attention to. We've got the current month, we have the previous month, but we also have year-to-date totals. So taking a look at 2020 and what we've closed already is going to give you that year-to-date value as well. Those are at-a-glance numbers. Of course, everything we saw on this original commission sheet, this Excel sheet here, actually comes from what's basically coming from the commission module. So reports like our commissions and closings, our agent production reports, all can produce the same information. And again, breaking out the fees that you're collecting, which makes it really easy to see an aggregate amount for maybe the different types of fees like staging, photography, things like that you're charging. How common are they used? What's the revenue from each of those? Being able to break those out is going to be a really helpful step in terms of what decisions you have to make around that. Do we change it? Do we add to it? Do we try and force more agents to use it, or encourage them to use it, I should say? Coach more agents to use different fees like that? Which ones have the greatest return for us in different areas like that? So being able to pull that is going to rely on, in that first step, which is managing those fees correctly in pipeline, using those features that we have available where you can put each of those different fees in there, and of course pulling reports to see what's come from each of those fees specifically, or of course in aggregate for the month or for the year. Now, if you don't have the commission module and you're kind of curious about what you've just seen here today, you can certainly try it out. We offer a 30-day free trial. It's something that we're happy to turn on for you. Just reach out to us. Dan@paperlesspipeline.com is where you can reach me. But of course, our customer care team can also help you with that as well. So reach out to them anytime.